The story begins with the aftermath of the end of World War II. There was so much chaos everywhere that it became difficult for people to live. However, during this time, we are shown a very large city where a different government operated. This city was not affected by World War II like other countries because it had its own government and its own world, which was completely separate from other nations. The city's government knew that emotions and feelings were the cause of conflicts, and to prevent World War III, they banned emotions. To ensure this, all residents of the city were given a daily medication called Promise, which erased their emotions entirely. Without emotions, people wouldn't fight with each other. In addition, the government banned entertainment activities like watching movies or painting. Anyone who broke the rules set by the government was declared a criminal and was executed. To enforce these laws, the government had an organization called the clerics, who ensured everyone followed the rules. If anyone violated them, they would be found and killed. The story introduces a team of highly skilled soldiers who were part of the clerics. They received information that several people had infiltrated a building, opposing the government. These individuals were breaking all the government rules, so the soldiers were tasked with capturing them. The team's main officers were John and Errol. The criminals had locked the door, but John, with incredible speed, broke it down. He bravely entered and started firing at the criminals. John's firing skills were so good that he didn't waste a single bullet. In no time, the soldiers killed all the criminals. Upon investigating the building, John's team found several movie cassette tapes and a large collection of paintings, all of which were illegal, including the original painting of the Mona Lisa. John's team used flamethrowers to burn all these items. They followed the government's rules and punished anyone who didn't comply. As they were leaving, John noticed a book in Errol's hands, which he had probably taken from the building. John asked Errol what he intended to do with the book, to which Errol replied that he needed to submit it at the headquarters as evidence. John dismissed Errol's answer. Inside the city, there was a father who guided all the people daily, telling the citizens what they should and shouldn't do. The father encouraged everyone to take their daily Promise medication, as there hadn't been any conflicts or fights among humans for a while due to the lack of emotions. This was one of the reasons why the medicine was promoted. The strange thing was that no one had ever physically seen the father. He only communicated through large screens placed around the city. After completing his task, John went to the headquarters to submit his report. The vice president of the headquarters, named DuPont, was very pleased with John's work, as John had successfully completed every case assigned to him so far. DuPont asked John how he was able to figure out when someone was thinking or feeling emotions. John simply replied that he thought like his enemies, anticipating what they might do, and acted accordingly. He shared that years ago, his wife had started showing emotions, and because she went against the rules, she was burned alive. Since then, he had been determined to catch anyone with emotions and give them the harshest punishment. DuPont was highly impressed by John. After submitting his report, John learned that Errol had still not submitted the book to the headquarters. In fact, it was still in Errol's possession, and he had lied to John about it. John quickly went to a church where Errol was sitting and reading the book. Both John and Errol knew that reading books inside the city was illegal. Errol, after reading the book, told John that perhaps they were being deceived on a large scale by avoiding emotions and feelings. He argued that without emotions, how could they truly be considered human? As Errol read the book, emotions began to awaken within him, and John could sense this change. According to the rules, Errol had now become a criminal, so John, determined to follow the rules, immediately pulled out his gun and shot Errol in the head. John had no emotions or feelings for anyone, not even for those close to him, as he was strictly bound to the regulations. Later, John returned home, where his son, Robbie, was present. Robbie, like his father, had no emotions. He told John that a close friend of his had broken the rules by watching movies, and asked if he should report him to the headmaster. John responded that his friend had broken the rules, and Robbie should definitely report him, so that his friend could receive the harshest punishment. This exchange revealed that, due to the lack of emotions, the relationship between John and Robbie was like that of two strangers. Their bond as father and son was purely formal. That night, as John went to bed, he suddenly started having visions of his wife. The scene he remembered was when a group of soldiers came to capture her, as she had started showing emotions again. No one knew that, seeing his wife being beaten, John had killed several soldiers. But when the other soldiers informed him that his wife had committed a grave crime and was a criminal, John hesitated. He knew that breaking the rules was the greatest sin, and that his wife deserved to be punished. The soldiers captured his wife, and as they took her away, she told John one last thing: "Even if I'm gone forever, don't forget me." And that was the last time John saw her. When John's wife kissed him, he experienced strange reactions in his mind, and he couldn't make sense of the reality around him. Both of John's children were observing the scene closely. For a brief moment, John felt that he might have emotions, perhaps for his family, but he quickly suppressed that thought. The next day, when John woke up, the bottle of the medicine called Promuseum, which he and all the residents injected into their bodies daily, accidentally fell and broke. His son told him that he could easily find the medicine at a nearby store. John quickly got ready and headed toward the headquarters to get the medicine, but due to recent terrorist activities, the headquarters had been closed for a few days. As a result, John couldn't get the medicine. At that moment, John's fellow soldier, Brand, arrived. Brand was heading to conduct a raid and took John along. John didn't tell Brand about needing the medicine and went with him. The two soldiers, along with others, arrived at the house of a woman named Mary, a criminal who belonged to a group protesting against the government. John quickly captured Mary and brought her near a mirror. However, as soon as he touched her, he felt an odd sensation, a feeling he had only experienced before when touching his wife. Realizing that this was an emotional reaction, John immediately let Mary go and stepped aside, as he had started to suspect that his body was beginning to develop emotions and feelings, which were prohibited. John tried to keep this hidden, so he stood aside, and Brand, watching John closely, was puzzled by his strange behavior. Meanwhile, the soldiers searched every corner of Mary's house and discovered a hidden room containing numerous books and paintings, illegal items. As a result, Mary was declared a criminal. Mary, in an attempt to save her life, grabbed a soldier's gun and pointed it at John. Brand, furious, tried to take the gun from her and beat her, but John stopped him, saying they shouldn't kill her, as they could use her to locate others who were against the government. Brand reluctantly agreed with John's plan. John then took Mary to the headquarters for interrogation. At the headquarters, John questioned Mary about the whereabouts of her associates, but instead of answering, Mary asked John about his purpose in life. John replied that his goal was to work hard and make society a better place. Mary, however, pointed out that the society he referred to wasn't really human anymore. She said everyone had become like robots, devoid of emotions and feelings. That night, John didn't take his medicine before sleeping, and he started experiencing strange visions. In his dreams, he saw his entire family being punished for their crimes and burned alive. The visions made him sweat like never before. When he woke up, John felt an overwhelming sense of unease, realizing that by not taking the medicine, he was beginning to feel emotions. He understood that the lack of medication was awakening his ability to feel. John rushed to inject the medicine into his body, but for some reason, he couldn't bring himself to do it. For the first time, he woke up early and felt the warmth of the sun's rays. After deciding not to take the medicine, he left for work, breaking several bottles of the medication along the way. As he walked, he took off his gloves and began to feel every object he touched, moving forward with newfound awareness. After arriving at the headquarters, John noticed that all the employees' desks were identical, and even the items on them were in the exact same positions. Employees were strictly forbidden from changing the positions of anything on their desks. However, John, now feeling emotions, began moving things around on his desk, something that was completely against the rules in the headquarters. Brand saw John's behavior and asked what he was doing. John simply replied that he was making some space on his desk. Despite John's defiance of the rules, Brand, recognizing John as the most capable employee in their organization, forgave him and took him on another mission. This mission was more dangerous than the previous ones. It took them to a location where the people who protested against the government lived. The protesters began attacking the soldiers, but the soldiers were ruthless, killing anyone who confronted them. An elderly man attacked John, and Brand immediately shot him. However, when John looked into the elderly man's eyes as he died, for the first time, he felt pain. This left John confused, so he pushed the man aside, but his hands were stained with blood, which made him feel deeply disheartened. Meanwhile, the soldiers brutally killed all the protesters. John started investigating the area and discovered a special room where the protesters had hidden numerous items. The room contained books, paintings, music, pictures, and other things filled with emotions, all of which were completely illegal. John listened to a beautiful piece of music in the room, and it stirred emotions inside him. The soldiers burned everything in the room, collecting evidence as they left. Just then, Brand noticed a book in John's pocket and asked what he intended to do with it. John explained that he would present the book as evidence at headquarters to help track down future protesters. Meanwhile, the protesters' apartment was home to several dogs they had been keeping. Brand orders his soldiers to kill the dogs, but John, feeling uneasy about the whole situation, intervenes and stops them from killing the animals. Brand, confused, asks John why he doesn't want the dogs to be killed, but John can't explain his reasoning properly. As the soldiers carry out the order, one of the dogs runs toward John. Without hesitation, John picks it up and decides to protect it. Brand and the other soldiers insist that John let the dog go so they can kill it, but John refuses. He tells them that the dog might carry a disease and that he needs to investigate further. This excuse allows John to take the dog back to headquarters, where he begins to keep it hidden. This raises suspicions in Brand, who starts doubting John's actions and motives. Back at headquarters, John talks to DuPont about the need to arrest the underground rebels instead of killing them, wanting to extract more information from them. However, DuPont insists that Father's orders are clear: all rebels should be killed, and the citizens must follow those orders. John, frustrated with the situation, heads to a storage room where he takes a ribbon from a box belonging to Mary, keeping it hidden in his pocket. Later that night, John takes the dog to a secluded spot, but seeing the dog's innocent face, he becomes even more emotional. He places the dog in the trunk of his car to protect it. However, when some soldiers arrive and surround his car, they initially don't recognize him, but when they do, they let him go. Just then, the dog starts barking from the trunk, causing the soldiers to become alert. In a quick decision, John draws his gun and eliminates the soldiers, ensuring the dog's safety. The next day, John arrives at headquarters and begins his usual training routine. Brand, sensing something is off, joins him, suspecting that John is slowly turning into a rebel, his emotions resurfacing. However, Brand remains silent, though he is aware that some of their soldiers were killed by unknown assailants the previous night. The government, realizing the growing threat from the rebels, intensifies its efforts to hunt them down. Brand accompanies John on another mission where they are tasked with capturing the remaining rebels hiding from the government. However, as John moves ahead of the other soldiers, he finds the rebels and instead of attacking, urges them to escape as the soldiers are likely to arrive any moment. The rebels are confused by his actions, unsure why John is helping them. But as John leads them out, the soldiers begin attacking. John takes them on, eliminating several soldiers single-handedly, and urges the rebels to flee. As John exits, he finds that Brand had already captured the rebels. Brand, suspicious that John's emotions have resurfaced, hands him a gun and orders him to execute the rebels. However, John, now resolute in his decision, refuses and returns the gun, stating that those who are supposed to carry out the executions should do so. With no other option, John walks away, and the soldiers carry out the brutal killings, sending John into a deep sense of guilt as he leaves without witnessing the carnage. Later, John finds himself sitting beside the dead body of his old friend Errol, who he had killed. He is overwhelmed with guilt and regret. While looking through Errol's wallet, he finds a photo of Errol with Mary, and a note that reads "Freedom." Determined to understand more, John visits Mary and reveals to her that he killed Errol. Shocked and enraged, Mary attempts to attack John, but he restrains her, touching her face, which reminds him of his wife. Once calm, Mary reveals that Errol was her boyfriend, and they had been in a relationship. She also informs John that Errol used to visit a place called Freedom, a library where he had frequent meetings. The next day, John visits the Freedom Library and confronts the librarian, demanding information about Errol's visits. The librarian reveals that Errol had been meeting with a man named Jürgen. John, eager to learn more, tracks down Jürgen, who confides in him that he, too, had stopped taking the prescribed medication, which had suppressed his emotions. Jürgen, trusting John, takes him to the underground location where people with emotions and feelings are living. These people have been hiding from the government. The first thing Jürgen's group does is test John to see if he has emotions. After a short while, John passes the test. He realizes that the government is wrong and that everyone should have complete freedom to live here. John says that the next day they will kill Mary, so Jürgen tells him that in order to stop all this, they must first kill Father. As John is returning with this information, several soldiers capture him and take him to headquarters. DuPont asks him about the information he received from a soldier, confirming that John has stopped taking his medication and has been meeting with the underground people. John explains that he has been gathering information to capture them. After saying this, he leaves. Back home, John watches his children sleep lovingly for the first time. He checks to see if his son Robbie is taking medication. Just then, Robbie wakes up and asks him, "What are you doing?" John doesn't answer but tells him to go back to sleep. Robbie then lovingly calls him father and goes back to sleep. John is shocked because Robbie had never called him father so affectionately before. This is a sign of the emotions that have resurfaced in him. At the underground location, John informs them that finding Father won't be easy. Jürgen assures him that he is a skilled warrior and the only one who can find and kill Father. After Father is killed, Jürgen will lead his underground army to attack the headquarters, taking control. The time comes for Mary to be burned, and John feels confused, not knowing what to do, especially since his wife was burned in front of him years ago in a similar manner. Unable to bear it any longer, John rushes to the headquarters to save Mary, but by the time he arrives, it's too late. Mary is already locked in a chamber and burned to death. Seeing this horrifying scene, John started crying uncontrollably, as if he were crying after many years. At that moment, Brunt appeared in front of him, and his doubts were confirmed. John now had emotions. With the help of his soldiers, Brunt beat John severely and took him to headquarters in front of DuPont. Brunt told DuPont that John was allied with Mary and that he had killed their soldiers. However, John defended himself, saying that the traitor was not him, but Brunt. He explained that the gun used to kill the soldiers belonged to no one else but Brunt. After an investigation, it was discovered that the bullets were indeed from Brunt's gun. Consequently, John was not found guilty, and Brunt was arrested. It turned out that the entire plan had been John's, but DuPont, now suspicious of John, ordered his soldiers to search John's house. John feared this because he had hidden his medicines behind a mirror. He rushed home and checked, but the bottles were gone. A short while later, John's son came forward and admitted that he had taken the medicines so the soldiers couldn't find them. John was shocked to learn that ever since their mother's death, both of his children had stopped taking their medicines. John felt relieved and happy about his children's initiative. John then devised a foolproof plan to meet Father. He deliberately handed over some underground people to the soldiers, knowing that DuPont and the headquarters would be so pleased that they would arrange a meeting with Father. Just as expected, after doing such a good deed, the headquarters prepared to introduce John to Father. But before that, on the screen in the polygraph room, Father's face was shown, revealing a dark secret. He explained that Brunt's arrest had been part of their plan, and they had only used John for their own purposes. DuPont knew that John had stopped taking his medicines and that emotions had now resurfaced in him. According to Father, in order to find the underground people, they needed someone just like them, and that's why they chose John. Thanks to John, they now knew everything about the underground people and would soon wipe them out. However, a shocking revelation came to light: Father had been killed many years ago. The true voice behind Father was none other than DuPont, who had taken his place and used recordings to guide everyone. John was completely shattered and filled with anger. He quickly grabbed his gun and started shooting all the soldiers present. His anger was unlike anything he had ever felt before, and compassion seemed to have vanished from him. In no time, John eliminated all the soldiers using his gun and set off to kill DuPont. But now, John would have to face DuPont's most dangerous soldiers, who were incredibly powerful. Still, John drew his sword and started slaying them, knowing that as long as Father's regime wasn't overthrown, they wouldn't be able to live in freedom. He fought fiercely and defeated the soldiers, but then Brunt appeared with a sword, ready to fight John. In one swift move, John decapitated Brunt and continued on to face DuPont. Although DuPont attacked John, he begged, saying, "Please don't kill me, I can feel emotions just like you, and if we join forces, we can rule this entire empire." But John didn't listen to any of his pleas. With one shot, he killed DuPont. Now, John destroyed everything at the headquarters that controlled the city's power. The underground people were now free, wreaking havoc all around, but this destruction was necessary for a fresh start. Before long, the entire regime built by Father collapsed. All those who had been made emotionless by the government had stopped taking medicines, and they were now real human beings, not robots. And with that, our adventurous story comes to an end.